Welcome to my pocket-sized lesson for Pokemon Pocket and the physical TCG. Today I want to talk about the crucial skill of prize mapping. I'll explain what it is, how you can achieve it, and how you can prevent the opponent from doing as well. So what is prize mapping? It's none other than the act of planning out your KOs, which are necessary for the win cons of both games, to win as efficiently as possible. Because the sooner you win, the less turns your opponent has to win before you can. It mainly consists in foreseeing how the match is gonna play out. In which turns you think you're gonna be able to attack, what your opponent will have in an active spot in any given turn for you to KO, what possible outs your opponent has, and on top of all of this, you have to adapt your game plan to what happens during a match. For example, when the opponent makes a switch at a time where you wouldn't expect to, or if you top deck something that can be really useful to your situation at hand. It's called prize mapping, and you will understand later why, but it's crucial to Pocket as well. Speaking of which, Pokemon Pocket works on the point system. Each knockout grants you a point, or 2 points if you knock out a EX Pokemon, and you need to get 3 points in order to win. Now, in order to win efficiently, you want to route your game plan in a way that nets you exactly 3 points as fast as possible. So you either KO 3 1-point Pokemons, or you knock out a 1-point Pokemon and an EX Pokemon. In the physical TCG, the same logic applies, but it's definitely more complicated. There are prize cards instead of points, which work very similarly, but there's 6 of them, which means there are a lot more possible combinations you can have. You can knock out 2 single prize Pokemon and 2 EXs, 1 EX and 4 single prize Pokemon, 3 EXs, or even like 6 single prize Pokemon if it's a single prize only deck. And sometimes the standard format has access to 3 prize Pokemon, which allow for even more combinations. Like now you can have 3, 2, 1, or just 2 3 prize Pokemon. And there's also a lot compared to Pocket as of now. A lot more tools to make different paths, like boss orders, which is basically Cyrus or Sabrina but on steroids. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure boss orders will probably look absurd for a Pocket player. And there's also a lot more effects that target the bench Pokemons damage-wise, which we often refer to as bench sniping. I put Dusknoir because it's the best example right now. It's the most meta-defining, and there's a lot more effects which allow for a lot more ways to achieve the prize combination that you desire. If you want to go into more detail about that, I will link at the end of the presentation a video about the topic that's really well done, and it's definitely longer than this one, but not too long. Speaking also, I said as of now when I talk about Pocket because I think it might evolve in a direction that's definitely more similar to the physical TCG. I mean, there's already some bench sniping effects, but they're very limited. They may print other effects that force your opponent to switch. As more sets get added, more options become available, which means more ways to achieve victory. Even if you're just interested in Pocket, learning more about the physical TCG can make you better prepared for the future. Now, what I explained is only half the story, because as alluded to at the very beginning, your opponent will likely prize map as well. They also want to win as efficiently as possible. On top of thinking for yourself, you also need to mirror what I said to the opponent. Like what turn you think they will be able to KO, what you think you will have in the active spot at any given turns, and how you can switch up the game plan so that your opponent is forced to adapt. While you want to win as efficiently as possible, you want the exact opposite for your opponent. And this is where one of the most important, crucial aspects in deck building in Pokemon Pockets comes into fruition. If you see a tournament's deck list, like as lists gets refined and evolve, they usually want to force the opponent to go for a route that forces them to work for the equivalent of 4 prizes, which is obviously harder to do than just getting a route with 3 points. And you do that, like, you either want to force it to KO 2 EX Pokemons or 2 single prize Pokemon and 1 EX Pokemons. And you know, the cards that I put on screen are not at random. They're the representatives of, at the time of making this video, the 2 main archetypes that represent both philosophies. Starting with Dialga Arceus. The deck is based on Dialga, which can attach extra energies to the bench, and then you use Arceus, which has a bigger damage output compared to Dialga. So you want to start the game with Dialga in the active spot, give it energies, then charge up your Arceus yet, maybe both of them, if you got both of them, and then switch to Arceus to do bigger damage. The deck only wants EX Pokemon in the active spot, and sometimes it might even just have EXs. Usually they put a Shaming which heals you, or the other Shaming that reduces retreat cost, but sometimes it's just the EXs. So that your opponent will always have to do a 2+2 path. Then the other decks are the Manaphy water decks, which have usually Manaphy, Origin Form Palkia, and the EX Pokemon. There are many potential Pokemon in that slot right now. Sometimes it's even Palkia EX, so like you run double Palkia. Right now the most popular choice is Gyarados EX. The game plan is, you put Manaphy on the front, you use its attack to charge up as much as possible your bench, and after Manaphy gets KO'd, you put Origin for Palkia forward, attack with it, you make it take damage since 120 is a lot for a one prize Pokemon. And then after that gets KO'd, you put the big EX and force the 1-1-2 route for the opponent. Or alternatively, if they don't KO Manaphy but you charge up Palkia, you can put Palkia forward still and then put the other copy of Palkia in your deck and force the opponent to go through double Palkia. In the physical TCG, decks that usually aren't as focused on forcing an optimal prize mappings, but they naturally will have a combination of one prize and two double prize Pokemon, or even three sometimes. The one prize Pokemons tend to be the engine of the deck. They're usually the ones with the very strong abilities that allow you to draw or search for specific cards in your deck. And the EX Pokemons are the ones that have the strong attacks that do big damage. Obviously there are exceptions like Pheasant DPTX, which I put on screen, which is a very strong draw engine that's also a double prize Pokemon. Then there are sometimes, like a while ago there was like a Reggie deck which played all the 6 single prize Reggie to make it work, and that was only one prize Pokemon and attacked only with one prize Pokemon. But usually it's one prize support and double prize the attackers. So you already have the tools to force an optimal prize mapping for your opponent. Any combination of a total of 7 card prizes for the opponent is good for you. Or even 8 prizes if you got a free prize Pokemon. In that case you can put a free prize Pokemon, a double prize Pokemon, and then another free prize Pokemon. Or free prize Pokemon to one prize Pokemon and then another free prize Pokemon. Okay, there is one tip that I want to give you about this, which is to not put Pokemons in play that you don't need. Because every Pokemon you have is a potential target for the opponent. Only risk giving them an easy KO if you really need to. If you're in a bad spot and need to set up later in the game. And if you do, I usually recommend trying, if possible, to put as many copies as possible in the match in that case, because one target is easy to KO, multiple targets is definitely harder. Before I conclude the video, I want you to play a game. I want to play a game. These 2 cards are from the physical TCG that made an old deck, and while I said most decks in the game aren't made to specifically counter prize mapping, this definitely was. It's the Arceus V-Star and Duraludon VMAX deck. Keeping in mind that Arceus V-Star is a Pokemon that does decent damage and at the same time can charge up Pokemon in the bench, and Duraludon VMAX is a big free prize Pokemon. What do you think the game plan will be? Oh, the answer is you begin with Arceus V on the front and ideally 2 Duraludon V in the bench. At least 1, but ideally 2. Then after you evolve Arceus V-Star, you use its attack to do damage and charge up the Duraludon VMAX. And after Arceus V-Star gets KO'd, you put a Duraludon VMAX on the active spot and attack with that. And if your opponent kills the Duraludon VMAX, they now got a total of 5 prizes, 2 from Arceus, 3 from Duraludon. But then you will force them to go through Duraludon VMAX again, which it was already not easy the first time. It's definitely not gonna be easier now. I mean, maybe it is because it's set up, but you know. In total, your opponent will need to go through 8 prizes to win. If this looks very familiar to Pocket players, it's because it works very similar to the Dialga Arceus deck. It has a lot of the same principles. No matter which of the 2 games you're playing, prize mapping is crucial. There is a lot involved in achieving it, and there's a lot involved to make it as harder as possible for your opponent. So that's gonna be it for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe for more content about the Pokemon TCGs or Splatoon, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye!